believe globalisation is the mega context for mission today. While we can have some argument on when globalisation commenced, at some point to 1492, most agree that the process of globalisation began accelerating post-World War II, leapt into hyperspeed in the aftermath of the 1989 breakdown of world order, and the accompanying communications and travel revolution. And the communications revolution obviously so perfectly exemplified by the World Wide Web. We could say the speed of change has continued without abatement ever since. We really are living in pressing times, changing times. These changes have affected just about every part of the human community. Father John Pryor, a Divine Word missionary in Indonesia, tells the story of some New Guineans paddling their canoe up the river to a little village, where they proceed to the post office, type up and send an email before heading back to their canoe to continue their duties. I know you could probably now add many anecdotes that capture this phenomenon. We truly are living in a world that is getting smaller with each passing moment. Bob Schreiter, a great Catholic commentator out of Chicago, comments that globalisation as a phenomenon revolves around two axes: connectedness and space. The communications revolution has created unprecedented potentialities for human connectivity. How many of us now, within a few seconds ago, were checking out our phones? So much social and political change is now directly linked to the ability of people to communicate with each other, to effectively mobilise each other, and to keep the world informed about what is happening. While not discounting the influence and the power of mainstream media, the communications revolution has now distributed power to individuals and communities who, through modern technologies, can create networks to influence public opinion. Consider the recent Arab Spring, an example par excellence of this. As a truly global organisation, the Catholic Church is perfectly positioned to utilise communications technology and work in partnership with people of goodwill to provide accurate information and influential stories. In short, through its communication resources and networks, the Church's potential to influence the world has never been greater. It's a good news story. The other axis, space, has led to the obliteration of time and place as an organising principle. We used to speak of people from being from another time, particularly the social Darwinism talk, where the talk of human evolution placed people and cultures at different stages of so-called human development timelines. Now we have diverse peoples communicating and relating instantaneously around the globe, just like our New Guinean friends. The Lineamenta acknowledges that we find ourselves immersed in a period of significant historical and cultural change, number 3, and speaks of 6 sectors calling for a new evangelisation in number 5. And the document names these sectors as culture, social communications, economy, scientific and technological research, and lastly, civic and political life. Time prevents me from discussing these sectors in detail, but issues such as secularism, pluralism, migration, ethnic and religious identity, fundamentalism and violence are noted. This issue of exclusion is particularly important to recognise. We're talking about connectivity and the great increase in connectivity, but there's something very significant that's going on with globalisation. While hard to measure, it is estimated that only 20%, and this is very hard, but Bob Schreiter makes this comment from his surveys, only 20% of the world's population has benefited from globalisation, with 80% experiencing a worsening of their circumstances. We talk about the gap getting bigger. It is in this globalised context that exclusion leads to the rise in ethnic and religious identity, and at its extreme, development towards fundamentalism and associated violence. So that's a response to exclusion, and we're seeing plenty of evidence of this. The document would have greater clarity if the overarching context of globalisation was outlined early, and from that overall mapping, the different sectors could be examined. it needs to be named and understood that globalisation, particularly since the 1980s, is the mega context for mission, and how it is reaching down and impacting every local context on the globe. I wish to make one comment regarding the nature of the Church's relationship with the world. I'm delighted that the Lineamenta calls for the Church to engage with this changing context and to recognise the strengths, weaknesses, risks, the document says, of globalisation. As it states in number 5, in facing these challenges, the Church does not give up or retreat into herself. Rather, accepts the challenge to take part in these phenomena, so to speak, and bear witness to these sectors from the inside. The document identifies dialogue as the critical starting point for engagement with the world. Not only should the Church open herself to interreligious dialogue, but also, quote, dialogue with those of whom religion is something foreign. Dialogue is identified as a promising opportunity to learn and compare how the religious question is seen in other religions, thus allowing Catholicism to understand more deeply the ways in which the Christian faith can listen and respond to each person's religious sense. Number 8. We're near the end, Charles. This attitude to listening is, I believe, well captured in the following question. The questions in the document, I commend them to you. At the end of number 4, one of the questions is, in the process of discerning events in history, what should be shared with the universal Church, so that by mutually listening to these happenings, the universal Church can recognise where the Spirit is leading her in her work of evangelisation? This stance towards listening, I believe, will be welcomed by those with whom the Church seeks to engage with. Listening demonstrates that the Church understands that she is truly in uncharted waters, and more than ever needs to rely on all people of goodwill, even those with no religious faith, to assist us in our journey, so as we seek to discover meaning, our connectedness, and so as to enable our story, our Christian story, to intelligently engage with these new times.